When she slept next to a stray dog, the incredible transformation that followed will shock you. Jamie pulled her worn jacket tighter around her as she trudged home from the diner. The harsh wind whipped at her face, but the cold biting her skin felt insignificant compared to the heaviness in her heart. Each night, as the diner buzzed with laughter and chatter, Jamie felt more like a ghost than a person. The vibrant checkered tablecloths and jukebox playing country classics only highlighted her isolation. Life here had turned into a monotonous cycle of waiting tables, squaring bills she couldn't pay, and raising Chloe, who had started to unravel at the seams. Disappointment felt familiar now. After Jacob had walked out, dreams deferred piled upon Jamie like the snow that blanketed the town. She stood at the crossroads of survival and despair, battling her own uncertainty. Thoughts raced through her head while she prepared for another argument with Chloe, who had begun to lash out over every trivial matter. "Why can't you be more like the other moms?" Her daughter would hurl in frustration, and Jamie would swallow the retort that lingered on her tongue. As she rounded the corner, the soft golden glow of a flickering street lamp caught her attention. Crouched beneath it was a scruffy stray dog, shivering and alone. His fur was matted and dirty, but there was something about him that stirred a flicker of warmth deep within her. For a moment, Jamie hesitated, her mind battling against her heart. Could she really take on another commitment, another mouth to feed? But the dog's soulful eyes seemed to call her, igniting something missing in her heart. Just before she could change her mind, Jamie scooped him into her arms. "Welcome home, Max," she whispered, unaware of the tidal wave of complications that would follow. Upon entering the house, Chloe's disdain was palpable. "We don't have room for another thing in this house, Mom." She shot back, arms crossed like a fortress. The fight over Max escalated, echoing through the walls of their already cramped lives. For Jamie, the old wounds of financial strain and emotional fracture felt exposed once more. With Max curled up on the couch, Jamie often found patches of quiet in the chaos. His presence nudged her back to memories of baking pies with her grandmother, time spent creating, laughing, living. But as the warmth grew, the threat of Mr. Thompson, the town's oppressive dog breeder, loomed over her, threatening to snatch it all away. His threats echoed in her mind, spiraling her into a pit of doubt. What if she lost Max? What if they ended up in court? What if her community, so quick to dismiss the forgotten, turned their backs on her too? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Inside her, anguish twisted like a knife. Every confrontation with Mr. Thompson siphoned her strength. Stakeout at the diner turned to whisperings of her failure. As she confronted her own capabilities for the first time in years, dreams of a bakery flickered dimly in the distance, taunting her with what-ifs. Could she fight for Max while rediscovering herself too? Just as doubt battered her resolve, a familiar face from her past, Richard, materialized with an unexpected proposal. As Jamie paced on her front porch that night, the weight of uncertainty bore down on her. An urgent message from Chloe illuminated her screen, pulling her back to the present. A fast-approaching court date danced in her mind, leaving one chilling notion to echo: to claim her happiness, she might need to battle both for Max and for herself. Would the choice to fight rekindle lost parts of her, or shatter them anew? The blaring alarm clock shattered the early morning silence, reverberating like her racing heartbeat. Jamie bolted upright, thoughts of Max and the impending court date scorching her mind. She sprang to action, stifling memories of yesterday's confrontation. Today marked a new chapter, a day that could very well shift the course of her life. Determined, Jamie brewed a pot of coffee, the rich smell teasing at a semblance of comfort. The swirling steam provided a brief moment of solace, but as she sipped, she also tasted the bitterness of her situation. She glanced at Max sprawled lazily on the rug, and a flicker of hope ignited within her. In that instant, she realized that while she fought for him, she could also fight for herself. "Alright, Max. We've got work to do," she murmured, inspired by the idea of their combined fight. She opened her laptop and began to research dog adoption laws and local shelters, immersing herself in information that could equip her for the battle ahead. Pages filled with resources sparked something within her, a latent drive she hadn't acknowledged in ages. As the morning slipped into afternoon, her determination morphed into tangible plans. With every article, every document she absorbed, Jamie's sense of agency solidified. She mapped out strategies, rehearsed her arguments, and even jotted down a few key points for the court: stories of resilience, companionship, and love. Thoughts of the bakery crept back in. Could this path lead to something bigger than herself? Chloe wandered into the kitchen, her disinterest evident as she scrolled through her phone, yet Jamie felt the tremors of their strained relationship under the surface. "What are you doing?" Chloe asked with an edge of annoyance. "I'm preparing for the court date. I need to show them Max belongs here," Jamie replied, her voice steadier than she felt. "And I need to prove to myself that I can do this." Chloe rolled her eyes, frustration seeping through her teenage demeanor. "Great, but why don't you just let him go? It would be easier." Her daughter's words struck deep, cutting straight to the heart of Jamie's fear. What if Chloe was right? What if fighting felt like banging her head against a wall? But beneath her uncertainty, Jamie felt a surge of defiance. "Enough. This is about more than just Max. This is about my life, too." Chloe's expression shifted from irritation to surprise, and Jamie's heart raced, uncertain if she had crossed a line or planted a seed. The tension in the air thickened, but for the first time in months, Jamie felt empowered by her own words. Perhaps this change wasn't just about reclaiming Max but repairing the shattered pieces of their relationship. Taking a deep breath, Jamie pulled Chloe aside. "I know things have been tough. I'm still working on being a better mom, but I want to show you what it means to fight for what matters." Chloe's guarded expression softened, the barricades she had built around her heart flickering with uncertainty. Jamie pondered the potential of this moment. What if they could journey together through the impending battle, emerging stronger rather than apart? As evening approached, Jamie's mind swirled with new possibilities. Her closed-off world had begun to crack, revealing glimpses of hope. She envisioned sessions over baking pies with Chloe, their collaboration mending the distances that had formed between them. But as they settled into a quiet evening, a notification pinged on her phone. A message from Richard popped onto the screen. He had news about a last-minute development related to the case. Curiosity and dread intertwined within her. What did he find that could potentially change everything? The stakes had been raised, and Jamie knew she was on the precipice of something profound. The time had come to face both the challenge from Mr. Thompson and the battle within herself. The message from Richard loomed in her mind like a storm cloud. What could he possibly have uncovered? Jamie felt her heart quicken, burdened with both anticipation and fear. She dared not open the message immediately, a weird superstition gnawing at her. Instead, she cast a cautious glance at Chloe, who was curled up on the couch, absorbed in her phone. The moment felt delicate, a balance between professional urgency and the need to connect with her daughter. "Chloe," she started, tentatively stepping into the potential tumult. "Can we talk?" Chloe glanced up, her brow furrowing in irritation. "I thought you were busy." "I am," Jamie replied, feeling the weight of her words. "But I need your help, too." There was a brief moment of silence that stretched, filled with the faint sound of Max snoring. Chloe finally set her phone down, curiosity replacing her annoyance. "What do you need?" "I might have some new information that could change our situation with Max." Jamie's voice trembled as each word left her lips. "I might not have it together all the time, but I want to figure this out with you. Together." As her daughter processed Jamie's words, Jamie's thoughts raced. For so long, she had kept her struggles obscured, behind walls of emotional self-preservation. But perhaps striving for connection could pave the way for personal growth. Could Chloe see that her mother wasn't just a failure but a fighter? Fine, Chloe finally said, her tone begrudging but the flicker of interest evident in her eyes. What do you want to do? Just then, a sense of empowerment surged within Jamie. They began dissecting the legal complexities together, each piece of information integrating their thoughts. Jamie was surprised at how easily Chloe understood the legal nuances. It was intoxicating watching their teamwork unfold, two minds aligned for the same purpose. What if this challenge became a turning point for both of them? Hours slipped away in that collaborative space, and as they finished sorting through various documents, Jamie felt a spark of confidence igniting within her. The knowledge they had gleaned felt more substantial than anything she could gather alone. Perhaps professional and personal could intertwine so seamlessly. Okay, time to see what Richard has to say, Jamie said, her voice steadier than before. She opened the message, her stomach knotting up as she read the words. Before her eyes a new piece of evidence had surfaced, one that implicated Mr. Thompson in a dubious dogfighting ring. Jamie blinked, disbelief washing over her. No way, what is it? Chloe leaned closer, her earlier indifference replaced with genuine interest. Thompson's been hiding this, Jamie whispered, a mixture of shock and resolve coursing through her veins. If we can prove this, it could change everything for Max. They'll have to reconsider the fight for his future. Chloe's enthusiasm brightened the room. That's it. We can take this to court and show them who he really is. In that instant, the camaraderie between them solidified further. Jamie realized she wasn't just fighting for Max or herself, they were both embarking on a journey towards self-identity and purpose. However, as they celebrated their small victory, an unsettling thought crept in. What if this news only ignited Thompson's wrath even more? What if he retaliated in a way she hadn't anticipated? Determined, Jamie shook off the doubts. There was no backing down now. She had taken a step toward reclaiming her life, and she wouldn't stop. A fierce protectiveness surged within her, fueling her strength, but just as they began to form a plan, the doorbell interrupted their discussion, sending a jolt of anxiety down Jamie's spine. Who could it be? Clenching her fists, she exchanged a look with Chloe, determination intermingling with apprehension. The approaching storm wasn't just about court, it was personal, and Jamie felt the weight of her past sliding back into the foreground. As she moved toward the door, uncertainty gnawed at her. Had she truly prepared herself for whatever came next? When she swung it open, she was greeted by the unexpected, and the reality of battle began to unfold. A familiar face stood on the other side of the door, one that Jamie had hoped to never see again. Rick, her ex-husband, leaned against the doorframe, a mix of concern and agitation etched across his features. Jamie's pulse raced, a visceral response to his unexpected arrival bringing back memories she had strived to bury. "What are you doing here?" she questioned, her voice firmer than she felt. The flood of emotion threatened to overwhelm, but she tried to ground herself, channeling the solid resolve she'd found in her recent alliance with Chloe. "I heard about Max," Rick said, his gaze darting to Chloe, who now stood behind Jamie, a mix of curiosity and wariness on her face. "I want to help." The words hung between them like a taut string, vibrating with implications. Jamie fought the urge to slam the door in his face. Help? Where had that sentiment been when they had split? Their past was an intricate tapestry of resentment and betrayal. Rick's presence cracked the facade of stability she had only just begun to build. Chloe's voice broke the tension. "You think you can just show up and offer help after all those years?" Her tone dripped with skepticism, mirroring her mother's feelings. "Listen," Rick said, raising his hands in a placating gesture, "I know I haven't been there, but I promise I can be useful. I still have ties in the legal community that could help us against Thompson." Jamie felt her mind swirl with conflicting thoughts. Could she actually rely on him? His offers of assistance resembled the puffs of wind before a gale, promising some relief yet also carrying the potential for chaos. Deep-seated mistrust wrestled in her chest. She couldn't forget the way Rick had let her down before. "I don't know if you realize the stakes here," Jamie replied, feeling the desperate need to define the parameters. If Thompson finds out about our plans, things will escalate beyond what we can handle. I get it, Rick said, leaning closer, earnestness spilling out of him. But this evidence you and Chloe have could break him. Let me at least help you secure it legally. Chloe exchanged a scrutinizing glance with Jamie, and Jamie sensed her daughter weighing the situation. This small moment of uncertainty flickered between them, revealing how fragile their newfound connection was. Jamie had just begun to teach Chloe about trust and teamwork, and here came a blast from the past threatening their fragile alliance. Mom, Chloe finally said, her voice low, you don't have to do this alone anymore. You have me. The weight of Chloe's words struck Jamie deeply. She had been fighting for so long, struggling to carry burdens alone, yet she had seen the effectiveness of teamwork with Chloe. Trusting in that partnership felt infinitely more daunting now, especially with Rick's shadow looming over them. What do you think, Chloe? Jamie asked, her voice unsteady as she tried to gauge the situation from her daughter's perspective. If it were time to make a choice, they would do it as a united front. The pause felt heavy, a fraught silence settling in. Would her decision unknowingly expose them to Rick's potential betrayal, or could his involvement fortify their strategy? It was murky, uncertain ground. Chloe began, hesitating again, her expression demonstrating the weight of the decision. If he can really help with the court case, then maybe, but the thought lingered like an unanswered question. Would Jamie truly allow this man back into their lives when so much was at stake? Suddenly, the air seemed charged with an electric tension. Jamie looked between the two, feeling the walls of her past and future collide in a shattering moment of realization. She had to choose, not just for herself, but for Chloe too. Fine, Jamie heard herself say, her voice firm as she made her decision. But if you betray us again, I won't hesitate to cut you out for good. As Rick stepped forward, a semblance of determination rekindled in Jamie. They would face whatever battles awaited them together, but this was just the beginning of a much larger ordeal. The real question loomed. Pressing heavily, would this collaboration steer them into calmer waters or set them on a course for disaster? Thus, Jamie took a breath, feeling the weight of choices made and those yet to come. Facing the weight of her decision settled momentarily in the room, Jamie felt as if she had stepped onto shaky ground, each pulse of her heart marked by uncertainty. She cast a quick glance at Rick, who seemed buoyed by her cautious acceptance. His presence felt like a storm cloud on an otherwise clear horizon, and she wasn't sure how to navigate the brewing turmoil. Let's talk details then, she said, gesturing for them to move inside the house. The space felt warm and familiar, but with Rick's entrance, it took on a new tension. Jamie heard an echo of her old life in every creak of the floorboards beneath his feet. Rick stepped inside, his demeanor imbued with a sense of purpose that grated against her instincts. She didn't trust him, not yet. Whatever you have planned to do against Thompson, it needs to be executed with precision, he said, his voice steady as he leaned against the kitchen counter, exuding an air of confidence she had long since associated with their worst times together. First, we need to clarify boundaries, Jamie answered, feeling a wave of determination swell within her. I'm not relying on you for emotional support or to stir up past mistakes. This is strictly about the case. Rick nodded, the smirk fading from his face. Understood. But I can bring valuable resources, contacts, legal advice, maybe even intel on Thompson. There it was, the shadow of the past and the allure of opportunity intermingling like a double-edged sword. Jamie forced herself to consider the possible benefits amid her unease. Chloe stood quietly watching, absorbing the dynamics unfolding. Jamie could sense her daughter's apprehension mirrored her own. Here they were, finally building a relationship based on trust and mutual respect, only to have it tested by the entrance of someone who once shattered that trust entirely. Mom, Chloe spoke up, her voice softer yet resolute. What if we set some ground rules? Like regular check-ins or your presence during meetings? I can agree to that, Rick replied, his eyebrows lifting in a way Jamie found unsettling. We'll structure everything as if it's business, Jamie asserted, feeling an undercurrent of resolve push through the uncertainty swirling around them. No casual interactions. We don't need distractions. There was no point in finessing the truth any longer, it was raw and palpable in the air between them. She had to be guiding her daughter in the right direction, even if it meant walking straight toward a potential pitfall. As they laid out the framework for how the next steps would unfold, Jamie felt an unexpected flicker of empowerment ignite within her. She wasn't only a victim of her past anymore, she was navigating a new realm of strategy and resilience. The more they spoke, the more she realized her voice was gaining strength, asserting her boundaries with each word. While Rick discussed his contacts, unlikely scenarios flitted through her mind, visions of Thompson's downfall intertwined with their burgeoning alliance. There was potential here, she sensed it, but the risk simmered beneath the surface like a boiling pot of water. Over the next hour, they fleshed out a plan, a strategy so thorough and meticulous that Jamie almost forgot the unease carousing in her heart. Her focus shifted entirely to how they would dismantle Thompson's operations, but also to how she would uphold her newfound sense of agency. The meeting wrapped up with a feigned sense of ease, Rick leaving with a promise to gather intel. Jamie and Chloe stood side by side, relief punctuated by another wave of tension. "Do you really think this is a good idea, Mom?" Chloe asked as they locked the door behind Rick, the weight of her question hanging larger than the physical world around them. "I don't know," Jamie admitted. "But whatever happens, we prepare for it together. We can't let fear dictate our choices." Yet, beneath her momentary bravado, a small voice prodded her thoughts. Was this truly the right path, or merely another chapter written by someone else's hand? That night, as she lay in bed contemplating the day's dramatic upheavals, Jamie decided to confront her deepest fear on her own terms. What kind of person would she become in the pursuit of this justice? The answer felt like a vessel, fragile yet strong, waiting for her command. Unbeknownst to her, a storm was brewing. Choices lay ahead, each one more critical than the last. Would she seize control of her fate, or would the weight of her past drag her under? The next day, she'd have to dig deeper into the layers of trust she was beginning to forge, because the real test was just around the corner. The morning sun filtered through the half-drawn curtains, highlighting the dust motes swirling lazily in the air. Jamie woke with a jolt, the events of the previous day igniting a fire of determination within her. She swung her legs over the edge of the bed, staring at the floor as if it held answers to her questions. Today was not just another day, it marked the beginning of a journey where her choices would define her. Her mind hummed with the plan they had constructed, each detail more intricate than the last. The more she revisited it, however, the more she felt the unfamiliar weight of responsibility. Was she truly prepared to navigate this minefield of emotions and strategy, or was she teetering on the edge of her own ambitions? After showering and sipping her coffee, Jamie sought solace in the warmth of the sun streaming through the kitchen window. Each ray felt like empowerment, a subtle reminder of the light she was reclaiming. Chloe's presence brought a smile, grounding her thoughts with a simple, unspoken connection. They were in this together, whatever it turned out to be. "Mom, are you nervous about meeting Rick again?" Chloe's voice broke the comfortable silence. More focused than nervous, Jamie replied, deliberately keeping her tone light. "It's all about thinking ahead and executing our ideas." Chloe nodded, though her eyes betrayed a mix of hope and worry. Jamie took a moment to consider her daughter's emotional landscape. Chloe had witnessed her past struggles, how could Jamie reassure her this time would be different? "Remember, we've set the rules, right?" Jamie reminded her. "Boundaries in place mean we maintain the power to decide." "I know, but there's always risk," Chloe replied, a shadow of doubt dancing in her expression. Jamie considered that for a moment. Risks were the heart of her plan, and the only way to pave a new path. Would she shrink away or rise to the challenge? Today would test the resolve she claimed only hours prior. When Rick arrived, Jamie adopted an air of professionalism, her demeanor carefully calculated. "Let's cut to the chase. We have serious work to do." Rick observed her with a bird-like intensity, as if he were sizing her up. "I appreciate the urgency. Based on our previous discussions, I've talked to some contacts, and I have updates on Thompson. Jamie felt her breath hitch at the mention of Thompson, but she swallowed it down, determined not to show weakness. Let us see what you've got, she pressed, trying to keep the slight tremor of trepidation from her voice. As details flowed, Jamie's mind worked furiously, absorbing information and strategizing. Each piece received a mental label: valuable, risky, or irrelevant, and she sensed herself transforming into a true participant rather than just a victim. Rick, I need to know everything about Thompson, his operations, his weaknesses, and any potential allies or enemies, she declared, her voice sharper than before. Rick seemed taken aback, perhaps noticing the shift in her demeanor. That'll take time. I'll need prep work, then we'll plan for that, Jamie interrupted, unwilling to let doubt creep in. Chloe and I can create a timeline to keep us on track, ensuring we follow through. Right, Rick said, an unsettled note edging his tone. As they delved deeper into their discussions, Jamie found herself leading the conversation, pushing boundaries, firing critical questions that left little room for complacency. The old Jamie never would have envisioned herself engaged in such decisive discourse, and yet, empowerment surged within her, shifting her from weakness into strength. By the end of the meeting, Jamie was exhausted yet exhilarated. The determination she felt was tangible. She was no longer just fighting against Thompson's shadow. She was determining her own course. Good work today, Mom, Chloe said as they left Rick behind, the door closing on a chapter Jamie was writing herself, one strong choice after another. Yes, Jamie agreed firmly. But this is only the beginning. We need to stay alert. I can't let my guard down just yet. As they walked home, a flood of possibilities filled Jamie's mind. Charting a path through such uncertain terrain tested her resilience in ways she hadn't anticipated. She might be laying foundations today, but what might the next move demand? What lay ahead was going to expose her character as never before. The true battle would not just be with Thompson, but revealing herself amidst the chaos. Would she thrive in this battle for justice or risk losing herself in the pursuit? The next rendezvous would certainly ask more of her than she was prepared to give. Jamie awoke the next day to a sharper resolve. The sunlight, now a familiar companion, poured through the window as if encouraging her to embrace the unknown ahead. She was acutely aware that uncertainty was her new ally, a powerful force that demanded she dig deeper within herself. The lingering apprehensions from her meeting with Rick were still nestled in her mind. The details about Thompson replayed like an ominous soundtrack, and unearthing the layers of his world felt like staring down a dark, beckoning tunnel. Yet beneath the fear, there was a growing flame of ambition igniting her actions. Today was not about what might happen, it was about what she could make happen. She experienced a flicker of doubt while preparing breakfast. Could she truly keep her footing as she ventured into this terrain filled with deceit and echoing betrayal? But as Chloe joined her, she straightened her back, letting the maternal instinct to protect and guide drown out the whispers of unease. Do you think we'll get more information today? Chloe asked tentatively, her fingertips drumming against the table. I have faith, Jamie replied, her tone firm but warm. Rick has connections that might give us the insights we need. Chloe smiled, but Jamie noticed the worry linger. It was that realization that solidified Jamie's commitment not just to her own mission, but also to her daughter's emotional safety. She needed to build a fortress of trust that not even the impending chaos could penetrate. The afternoon brought Jamie back to the office, where there lay a map of their next steps. Using sticky notes and colored pens, she laid out her thoughts, creating a strategy that felt almost tangible. Each note represented a choice and a consequence. The maneuvers she was learning to orchestrate felt exhilarating, transforming her from a passive figure into an architect of her fate. Rick arrived promptly, a briefcase in hand that possessed an air of mystery. His expression was harder to read today, and Jamie sensed the tension underlying his demeanor. Let us dive in, she urged, intensely aware of her increasing assertiveness. As they sifted through potential pathways to uncover Thompson's vulnerabilities, Jamie felt herself becoming immersed in the strategy, mentally strategizing far beyond the simplistic goodwill of the past. Your approach is different, Rick noted, an eyebrow raised as he assessed her commitment. I have too much at stake, she responded, her voice steadier than before. We're no longer just talking. We need actionable items. With every answer elicited from Rick, Jamie gained insights that unraveled the complexities of her adversary. She discovered Thompson's network was built not just on fear but on manipulation of people's ambitions and desires. The more she learned, the clearer her path appeared, and with that clarity came a surge of empowerment that filled her veins with purpose. What about Thompson's associates? Jamie queried, leaning forward. Most are untrustworthy. They're out for themselves. That's a double-edged sword you could use to your advantage. She jotted down his words, but a moral quandary crept into her thoughts. How far was she willing to go to dismantle his operation? The prospect of using deception against deceivers felt dizzying. Yet it also embodied the essence of the predicament she was in. As the meeting concluded, Jamie felt a rare sense of alignment within herself. The ember of conflict simmered beneath the poised surface. This was more than just business, it was a profound moral journey, one that forced her to confront her own values. Leaving the office later, the weight of what she had learned anchored her. Each step felt deliberate, purposeful, as she envisioned the battle looming ahead. Would she embrace the shadows of cunning or align with integrity? Chloe's welcoming smile greeted her at the door. So, what's next? Jamie hesitated, suddenly aware of the complexity of their venture. We need to dig deeper, she finally said, bracing herself for the potential shifts in her own beliefs and the inevitable confrontations ahead. The journey was unfurling, and fresh layers of her identity were set to be tested. With each layer, she could either spawn new growth or reveal fractures that could threaten everything she wished to protect. As darkness descended, Jamie stood at the crossroads, pondering, was she building an empire of justice or thorns of vengeance? The next confrontation with Rick and the specter of Thompson was growing closer, pulling her into a reality she could no longer ignore. The morning came with a sense of urgency that Jamie had never felt before. The weight of the information gathered from her meeting with Rick loomed over her, and she knew she had to act now. As she sipped her coffee, she stared out of her small kitchen window, contemplating her next steps. It was no longer about gathering data, it was about applying what she knew. Her resolve steeled, Jamie made her way to the office, reinforcing the determination that pulsed beneath her surface. Each decision felt like a carefully placed brick, building the walls of a fortress around her goals. She arrived early, the office eerily quiet, amplifying the palpable tension in the air. With a sense of purpose, she revisited her notes, the strategy plan unfurling before her like a map to a treasure filled with truths. This time, she added a new layer of insight subtext that could only be discerned if one was willing to look beyond the visible. It was about more than just Thompson, it was about the lives tangled up in his web of deceit. As the hours ticked by, Jamie dove into research, combing through data and rumors surrounding Thompson's associates. The tangle was intricate, but she felt exhilarated as pieces of the puzzle started coming together. There was power in knowledge, and she was determined to wield it with precision. Yet the ethical implications began tugging at her consciousness. The game she was playing conned her into questioning her own motives. Were they truly altruistic, or was she slowly slipping into a morally ambiguous zone herself? Rick arrived in the afternoon, his demeanor a mix of professionalism and cautious calculation. He sat down, and their discussion kicked off a frenetic energy that charged the dimly lit office. As they exchanged information, Jamie felt a weight shift within her. She was no longer just an ally, she was a player in a high-stakes game. Thompson's associates are like sharks in the water, he remarked, leaning back in his chair. They smell blood, and they will turn on him in a heartbeat if it serves their interests. That's leverage. Jamie noted his words carefully. Could she exploit their greed without losing herself to the very traps she aimed to dismantle? The inner conflict gnawed at her, but a rush of adrenaline also flooded her senses, driving her into deeper contemplation about her integrity. Are we willing to manipulate them as much as they manipulate everyone else? She challenged, searching Rick's eyes for a hint of clarity. He paused, taken aback by her directness. You're looking at this like a chess game, Jamie. Sometimes, the player with the most cunning strategy wins. There has to be a line we don't cross, she insisted, feeling her pulse heighten. If we draw them into our game, we risk becoming what we despise. The silence hung in the air, both of them evaluating the weight of her words. Jamie realized this was more than just professional development, it was a reckoning of her own defining qualities. As discussions evolved, Jamie found herself becoming a strategist, a role she had never envisioned for herself. She marveled at her newfound inclination toward risk, the confidence taking root even as her ethical compass spun dangerously. Each discovery pushed her further into uncharted territory. With their brainstorming session winding down, Jamie made a decision. Let us gather intel on their vulnerabilities and share it as leverage, but no underhanded tricks. We keep our integrity intact. The words felt powerful, each syllable grounding her resolve. Rick nodded slowly, a glimmer of respect in his gaze. Let us set a meeting with one of Thompson's closer allies. If we play this right, we could gain additional insight without compromising ourselves. That was her chance, a necessary confrontation with complicity that would further test her limits. As anticipation wrapped around her, Jamie felt the swell of purpose. She was not just a pawn. Soon she would orchestrate her first direct move in this dangerous game. As she exited the office, determination and trepidation tangled in her gut. Each step felt like marching into the unknown, knowing that the edges of her ethical boundaries might blur under pressure. Tomorrow would bring a new phase of confrontation. Would she walk away with her integrity intact, or would she find herself dancing precariously on the edge of moral collapse? The question hung in the air like an unsung melody, promising a resolution that felt both exhilarating and terrifying. As dawn broke over the city, Jamie's mind drummed with a relentless rhythm of anticipation. Today marked her first face-to-face negotiation with one of Thompson's allies, a key player in the dangerous web she was untangling. Her excitement was tempered by a nagging anxiety that pulsed behind her temples. She knew the stakes were high, but the implications seemed to ripple beyond her rational thoughts, heightening her awareness of just how deep the moral abyss could be. The morning was crisp as she navigated her commute, the city bustling with life, oblivious to her impending confrontation. Each signal light felt agonizingly slow as she played through various scenarios in her mind. Would her strategy hold under pressure? If Thompson's ally suspected any deception, would she falter? Jamie shook her head, willing herself to focus. She had taken the leap into this world, and now she had to swim or sink. Arriving at the upscale cafe where they were to meet, the ambience struck her as ironic, coffee and camaraderie in a high-stakes game of survival. With a steadying breath, she pushed open the door, scanning the room for her contact. Mark, an associate of Thompson, was seated at a table tucked into the corner, fingers tapping rhythmically on his phone. Jamie, he greeted with a disarming smile as she approached. Glad you could make it. His demeanor suggested a calm that she envied. Of course, thank you for meeting with me, she replied, sliding into the chair opposite him. The tension stoked her resolve, she could not waver now. As they engaged in small talk, Jamie observed Mark closely, his body language, his expressions. She had learned that the nuances of a person's reaction could reveal vulnerabilities that numbers and reports often concealed. Yet, she was aware that charm and deceit walked a fine line, and any hint of hesitation might mean the difference between success and being exposed. So, what can you tell me about Thompson's current strategies? She prompted, striving to sound confident. I've been hearing murmurs, and I love your insight. Mark's eyes narrowed slightly, but they held a curious glint. Always a pleasure talking shop, he said with an easy laugh. But you know how things go, it's risky sharing too much. A veil of caution enveloped his words. Jamie couldn't help but notice that they were both navigating treacherous waters. She leaned forward, her desire to forge a connection ignited by the stakes they were both playing with. I understand the risks. But I assure you, my interests align with yours if we want to mitigate potential fallout within the ranks. Thompson's foundering, and the tide is shifting. Those words hung heavy between them. Mark's posture shifted slightly, drawn in, the glimmer of interest sparking in his eyes. This was the window she needed. Yet, it also deepened the moral quandary she'd been wrestling with since teaming up with Rick. Was she merely creating a different kind of manipulation under the guise of collaboration? In that pivotal moment, Jamie felt the tug of her conviction wrestling with professionalism. She had choices: could she maintain her integrity while wielding the knowledge of Thompson's impending fall? Mark leaned back, a contemplative expression mapping his features. You have a solid point. But I can't strike a deal blindly. What's in it for me? It was a tactical pivot that sparked a deeper internal conflict. Here lay the very heart of the ethical dilemma. In a burst of audacity, she offered, perhaps we can draw on Thompson's weaknesses together. This isn't just about us, there's a whole network waiting to topple. The words felt bold, starved of her usual restraint. His curiosity was piqued, and tension crackled in the air, setting the stage for deeper revelations. Would she compromise her principles for potential gain? The creeping possibility of losing herself in this game loomed large, yet as she faced Mark across the table, Jamie knew this was more than professional development, it was a confrontation with her own integrity. The encounter could redefine her not just as a strategist, but as a woman navigating an unraveling world, a world where power was inversely proportional to morality. With each exchange, the stakes escalated. They were moving towards something fragile and explosive, a precipice neither of them could afford to overshoot. As their conversation deepened, Jamie felt the exhilarating yet terrifying possibility of defining her own rules in a high-stakes game. The question hung heavier in her mind: would she emerge from this without sacrificing her core values, or was she on the brink of an inevitable moral collapse? Each word became a step along a dangerous tightrope, and the fall seemed inevitable. Their eyes locked, an electrifying moment echoing the truth of their negotiation. With the air thick with uncertainty, Jamie realized that the real battle had just begun. How much of herself was she willing to sacrifice for knowledge, and what might be lost in the search for truth? The tension mounted as they approached the pivotal decision: would they ally with mutual benefit or turn the other into a rival? The next steps would be the most dangerous yet, and the outcome unpredictable, like a game of chess approaching checkmate. Days turned into a whirlwind of preparations and negotiations for Jamie. Each interaction built upon the foundations she had clawed together from her chaotic past. Max, now comfortably nestled in their home, became a constant reminder of what she fought for. Yet the looming confrontation with Mr. Thompson had transformed her resolve into a shield of protective armor against the specter of uncertainty that swirled around her life. The day of the court hearing arrived with a thunderous intensity that rattled her composure. Jamie stood in front of the mirror, adjusting the collar of her blouse, recognizing her own reflection for the first time in ages. The woman looking back was not the defeated waitress of the diner, but a mother and fighter prepared to assert herself. She had risen through loss to reclaim not just Max, but also her dignity and self-worth. As they arrived at the courthouse, Jamie felt the gravity of the moment wrap around her like a heavy cloak, tugging her toward a realization: this was more than a legal battle, it was a definitive milestone in her personal journey. The tense atmosphere buzzed with the electricity of unleashing truths. Mr. Thompson would soon be unmasked, revealing not just a villain's moral decay but also the potential of the community to rally behind what was right. Chloe, now emboldened by their shared struggles, held Jamie's hand tightly as they walked to the courtroom. "I believe in you, Mom," she whispered, eyes gleaming with admiration and acknowledgement of their newfound partnership. With that, Jamie's heart surged, filled with solid confidence. Through their trials, she had forged not just an alliance with her daughter but a bridge of communication that underscored their relationship's rebirth. The hearing commenced, and the room filled quickly. Each person who attended seemed to vibrate with emotion, some hopeful, others skeptical. Jamie straightened her back, prepared to demonstrate her resolve. Richard was by her side, having fulfilled his promise to help unearth the evidence that would turn the tide. As he stepped up to present the case against Thompson, Jamie could feel the momentum shift in her favor. "I present to this court not just a case," he began, his voice unwavering, "but the truth. There exists evidence implicating Mr. Thompson not only in the illegal selling of dogs but in acts of cruelty that cannot go unpunished." The room stirred, an undercurrent of unrest rippled through the audience. Each word crystallized Jamie's purpose, each syllable affirming her resolve. Her mind briefly flickered to the struggles of the past, the aching loneliness, the weight of unfulfilled dreams, the loss of her sense of self, all overshadowed by this moment of clarity. She was no longer a victim of her circumstances, she was a warrior. As the evidence was laid bare, a final piece caught Jamie's eye, a photograph of Thompson's facility, starkly depicting the adverse conditions in which the animals lived. The harsh reality exposed felt like venom in the air, and it ignited a fire in Jamie's belly. It was time to speak. "Your Honor," she interjected, steadying her voice despite the tremors of vulnerability. "This is about more than preserving Max. It's about bringing accountability to those who exploit the voiceless. It's about healing our community and inspiring others to stand against injustice." Her words struck a chord, echoing around the courtroom. She looked into the eyes of the attendees, feeling a rhythm of support pulsate back. This was her moment, not just for herself but for every person who had felt shut down by their circumstances. As the judge deliberated, Jamie took a deep breath, acknowledging the sheer volume of her growth. She had become a voice of strength, resilience, and purpose. The outcome of the case would not only define Max's future but solidify Jamie's inner transformation, providing her the recognition she so desperately sought to validate her journey. When the verdict was finally announced, Max was to remain with Jamie. A swell of emotion washed over her. The reality of her triumph grounded her. She felt the weight of the world lift, only to have it replaced with a profound sense of belonging. The shadows of doubt and fear began to dissipate, replaced by solid confidence and clarity of purpose. As Jamie stepped outside the courthouse with her daughter beside her, all the voices of disbelief faded into the background. She was ready to pursue her dream of opening a bakery, a space where the scent of fresh pies would blend with the warmth of community, a place of healing and creativity born from overcoming hardships. They floated through the bright afternoon sun, hands intertwined, and laughter mingling with hope. Jamie looked at Chloe, her heart swelling with pride for the growth they had achieved together. No longer were they isolated souls, they were a force of strength. In that moment, she knew that she had rewritten her narrative, transforming despair into empowerment and reclaiming her identity. This was the beginning, a launch into a brighter future shaped by determination and resilience. Jamie had triumphed over adversity, she had proven her capability, and she had emerged from the shadows into a new dawn. You need to subscribe now to witness more exclusive emotional stories that spark transformation. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and ensure you don't miss similar empowering journeys. Comment your reactions and theories about this monumental conclusion. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see the power of personal growth. Don't wait even one more second to show your support.